We are diving today into a verdict that is so explosive, so high stakes, it honestly reads like the climax of a political thriller.
It really does.
We're talking about the death sentence handed down to Bangladesh's former prime minister, Sheikh Hasina.
Ousted just last year after that massive student uprising. And now, the legal fallout has, well, it's hit its peak.
So for this deep dive, our mission is to really unpack the sources you've shared. We're going to be looking at the trial itself, the human rights context of the July Revolution.
Right, and the huge legal controversies around the tribunal they used, and of course the incredibly explosive political situation this whole thing has kicked off.
And before we get to the facts of the case, you have to understand the environment here. The sources describe Dhaka as being on a complete lockdown leading up to this verdict.
Oh yeah, we're talking police, the army, paramilitary forces.
Everywhere. And police had a shoot-on-sight order out.
Aimed at anyone launching explosives. This wasn't just a verdict announcement. It was a city bracing for impact. A security crisis waiting to happen.
That intensity really underscores the gravity of the decision, which came from a 3-judge bench of the International Crimes Tribunal in Dhaka.
And the ruling was, well, conclusive. A death sentence. And, crucially, delivered in absentia.
Right, because she's in exile in India right now, under their protection.
She is. So let's break down the core conviction, because this wasn't just some generic charge of, malfeasance.
Not at all.
The charges were specific and absolutely devastating. Incitement, direct orders to kill, and just gross inaction to prevent atrocities during that crackdown on protesters.
I was struck by the judge's statement. Justice Golam Mortuza Mozumder, he was chillingly specific.
He was. He convicted her of committing crimes against humanity by her order to use drones, helicopters, and lethal weapons against civilians.
Drones and helicopters, that detail about using military hardware against your own citizens is just stunning.
It is. So what was her immediate response from exile?
Well, she didn't mince words. She pleaded not guilty, obviously, and immediately attacked the entire process.
Calling it a politically motivated charade.
Exactly. She claimed the verdict came from a rigged tribunal established and presided over by an unelected government with no democratic mandate.
And that's a key point, because technically, she's not wrong about the interim government status, is she?
No, she isn't. The current administration, which is led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus, was appointed by protest leaders. It wasn't a conventional democratic vote.
It's an ad hoc arrangement. And that fact is what allows her supporters to frame this whole trial as purely political revenge.
Okay, so that sets the scene for the political battle. But to really understand the ferocity behind this death sentence, we have to zoom out a bit and look at what fueled the July Revolution.
Yeah, this wasn't about a single policy mistake. This was building for a long, long time.
15 years of power.
Exactly. And during that time, her tenure was widely described by human rights groups, even the UN, as a reign of terror.
A reign of terror.
Yeah, marred by really deeply documented allegations of corruption, torture, and enforced disappearances. The uprising was the boiling point.
And when those student protests finally kicked off, the state's response was just brutal.
Ruthless.
Yeah.
A complete crackdown. And we have documented proof of live ammunition being used against civilians.
The numbers are staggering. The UN Human Rights Office estimated up to 1,400 people were killed during the uprising.
1,400. To put that in perspective, the UN called it the worst political violence Bangladesh has seen since its 1971 independence war.
That level of state violence, it just screams for accountability.
It does. And there was this one moment, this one human element that became the rallying cry. The sources all point to the killing of a university student named Abu Saeed.
Right, he was shot at close range and the whole thing was captured on video.
And that tragic image just became a lightning rod. It unified the country against the regime almost overnight.
And that tragedy really gave the new government its moral mandate, didn't it?
Absolutely. It made prosecuting Hasina a core, non-negotiable promise to the nation.
The prosecution, led by Muhammad Tajul Islam, definitely delivered on that promise. He characterized Hasina as the mastermind, conductor, and superior commander of the atrocities. They went right to the top.
And what's fascinating is the kind of evidence they used, specifically audio recordings. Recordings of calls, allegedly from Hasina, that directly linked instructions from the Prime Minister's office to the deadly operations on the streets.
Wow. Audio recordings are incredibly powerful evidence. But here's the question. If the evidence is that strong, and they broadcast the trial for transparency, Why did groups like Human Rights Watch still say the trial fell short of fair trial standards?
This is where you have to look at the court itself to understand the controversy. It's a bit of a paradox.
How so?
The International Crimes Tribunal. It was originally set up to try war crimes from the 1971 Independence War.
So, a completely different historical crime.
Exactly. They repurposed it. And here's the irony. Hasina herself established it, and her opponents always accused her of using it for politically motivated cases when she was in power.
So the new government is using the old regime's legal tool to try the leader of that old regime.
Precisely. And that inherent political baggage, regardless of the audio evidence, it raises these structural concerns about due process.
That's a powerful irony. Accountability through the very mechanism of the regime being held accountable.
And we should also mention what happened to the others who were accused.
Right, the co-accused.
The former Home Minister, Asaduzzaman Khan, he also got a death sentence. But the former police chief, Chowdhury Abdullah Al-Mamun,
he flipped, didn't he?
He did. Pleaded guilty, turned state witness against Hasina. The judges even noted his crimes carried the death penalty, but he got leniency for cooperating.
That signals a really strong push to secure testimony against the very top.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the emotional impact of this. For the victims' families, this wasn't just a legal proceeding.
No, it was catharsis. The sources describe a man, Golam Rahman, who lost his son, Golam Nafis, in the violence.
I read his statement.
It was powerful. He said the death sentence was the only acceptable verdict and that he wants to see her hanged as an example to future rulers.
It's not about closure for them. It's about setting a precedent.
And his son, Nafis, his last known photograph, that haunting image of him in a rickshaw trying to get to a hospital.
That became a symbol. It was turned into stencil graffiti all over Dhaka.
Yeah, these images endure their physical memory of the violence, but that local demand for the ultimate punishment runs straight into international opposition.
Right. The UN's reaction was really mixed.
Very. They called the trial an important moment for victims and stressed accountability. But at the same time, they said they regret the imposition of the death penalty, which we oppose in all circumstances.
So we have this complete juxtaposition, victims demanding capital punishment and the international community standing against it on principle.
And it brings us back to that legal paradox. Human Rights Watch critiqued the trial for lacking safeguards while keeping the death penalty.
The UNIS government, though, they reject that criticism.
They do. They maintain that because they broadcast the trial live, which Hasina's political trials never did, their process is legitimate.
But keeping the death penalty on the books for a court already seen as politically flexible, that complicates things.
It certainly does. And regardless of all the legal nuance, the immediate political reality is that Sheikh Hasina is sitting untouchable in India.
Yeah, and Delhi is just ignoring extradition requests from Dhaka. That's a huge geopolitical chess move.
It's a massive strategic calculation. India protecting Hasina isn't just about shielding an old ally. Her party, the Awami League, has been banned from the upcoming election in February.
And they've vowed to cause mass unrest.
Exactly. So India is essentially holding this critical political counterweight outside the country, managing the risk of major destabilization right on its border.
Which means the battle ahead is guaranteed to be volatile. Her son, Sajib Wazid, confirmed his mother is safe, but also upset, angry, outraged.
And he said the family is determined to fight back by whatever means necessary.
Whatever means necessary, that's not a subtle threat.
Not at all. That vow to fight back ensures that the atmosphere we mentioned at the start, the crude bombs, the blockades, the panic, is going to continue. The stability of Bangladesh really hinges on this.
So what does this all mean? If we synthesize this, we see this extraordinary situation where accountability is achieved through political upheaval.
Right. An ousted leader tried by a government installed by the very protests she suppressed.
And using a controversial legal structure that, ironically, she created herself.
It's incredible. So the essential challenge, I think, for you to consider is what the long-term international consequences are. We have the UN opposing the death penalty while also applauding accountability.
We have a legally controversial court achieving a politically popular outcome. What kind of precedent does this set for post-authoritarian justice globally?
And maybe more urgently, will the Awami League's vow of mass unrest actually work? Will they sabotage this new government's attempt to restore democracy before the February elections?